All right, up next, it's time to talk about my favorite climate activist, the one and only Greta Thunberg. The left-wing media darling was just arrested twice in a single day while participating in yet another disruptive climate protest. We've got reporting here from The Independent. Climate activist was detained twice on Saturday by the Dutch police at a demonstration in The Hague in the Netherlands. Ms. Thunberg was arrested and detained for several hours along with other protesters who were attempting to block a major highway into The Hague, but was released later in the evening. She then rejoined a group of protesters who were blocking a different road and was detained a second time. Protesters have attempted to block the A12 highway in the Netherlands several times in recent months, demanding that there be an end to subsidies and tax breaks to companies linked to fossil fuel industries. Before being taken by police officers into a police van, Ms. Thunberg told reporters that she was protesting as the world was facing an existential crisis. "We are in a planetary emergency, and we are not going to stand by and let people lose their lives and livelihood and be forced to become climate refugees when we can do something," the Swedish climate activist said. And this is my favorite part, guys. When asked if she was worried about being arrested, Ms. Thunberg said, "Why should I be?" She flashed a victory sign as she sat in the bus used by police to transport detained protesters. You know, that last part there, I'm a huge critic of Greta, but she's actually onto something. She really has no reason to worry about being arrested because police and law enforcement in most places aren't really taking this kind of thing seriously, even though they should. Hence the fact that she was arrested and then immediately released and went right back to another protest and immediately blocked traffic in a different road again. If laws were actually being enforced, or if the penalties were actually severe enough to punish this kind of behavior as they should be, that wouldn't be happening. Again, I'm a huge proponent of free speech, and I would defend to the death the right of these climate activists to say their piece, to make their warnings, to make their arguments. But, and I don't know how many times I have to explain this to my friends on the left, blocking traffic is not a valid form of protest. It is not free speech. You are violating other people's rights to move, to travel, to get to work, to get to hospitals and ambulances, and you're only pissing people off and making them less likely to want to support your cause. I mean, when has inconveniencing people ever won them over to your side? It really does seem like these green activists, both abroad and here in the US, are committed to the most unappealing and most divisive protest tactics imaginable, from blocking traffic and holding people up from getting to their jobs, to trying to destroy and vandalize precious works of art. Now, some people will try to defend these tactics by pointing to the civil rights movement in the US and how they did sit-ins and that kind of thing, but there are a bunch of reasons that's not an apples-to-apples comparison. And also, it's worth pointing out that in that case, the protests actually targeted the places that were perpetuating the injustice, right? They did a sit-in at a segregated diner. That's very different than inconveniencing and sabotaging random everyday people because you're mad about the actions of the federal government or their inactions in this case. At this point, and I know the liberal media loves her, but it just seems undeniable that Greta Thunberg is actively sabotaging the movement and the support for addressing climate change. And that's a shame because I do believe it's a real problem, even if it sometimes gets exaggerated by green activists, and I don't think, like people like Trump have said in the past, that it's some Chinese hoax or made up or imaginary. We really do need to have a serious and substantive conversation about what things we could do to reduce carbon emissions, both in the US and worldwide, because if we just do it here in the US, it won't make much of a difference. And there are legitimate options on the table, like expanding the use of nuclear power, which has zero emissions. But that serious and important conversation is only being sabotaged by people like Greta and her childish antics.